Talk about the first week of practice. What have you seen, and how do you think things are coming together?
I think things have gone well. I think this first stretch is always kind of the hardest. Everybody's getting their legs under them a little bit, while at the same time installs happen fast. Every day there's a whole new installation period going in, so things kind of start rolling on guys. So it's this first week is the biggest one, and then when you kind of get through Fan Fest and then next week into the first preseason game, I think things start kind of coming together for a lot of guys. So this is a big stretch for us, but I think we've gotten good work in, and you just got to keep putting good days together.
Greg, Ron mentioned last week that you all are even moving faster by design in walkthroughs and et cetera. How has that been for the team so far, picking up that speedier pace?
Yeah, I think that's true. I think it's just nice. We have a lot of guys that are back, a lot of familiar faces that have been through these installs a lot. So maybe in past, especially the early first couple installs that are pretty basic. In past years with a lot of new faces, you really have to go back and start from scratch. Here, we're able to kind of start there, but kind of pick our tempo up a little bit and start putting things in, start putting in wrinkles, start talking things a little bit more complex than just like the bare bone base stuff like you have to do some years. So I think offensively we've put in a lot of our offense thus far, if not all of it. Probably not a whole lot left that still needs to go in. And guys have done a really good job handling it. We got a lot of smart guys. We got a lot of guys that have experience, both in our systems and others. So that's a big benefit.
How much of that offense is being held back to where it's not on display for us and for the fans?
Yeah, I think when you start talking about game planning specifics to certain teams and whatnot, there's always different wrinkles. But our offense is what we run. It's been what we've run for the last 5-6 years. We don't reinvent ourselves every year. There's always little wrinkles and little nuances that we address in the offseason as areas of improvement. But for the most part, the plays are the same. For the most part, a lot of the formations, the terminology, everything stays very consistent. And when you have kind of the continuity that we've had coaching-wise and, obviously quarterback and offensive line kind of down the line, that's kind of the way it is around the league.
So when we talk and write about the evolving offense, is it more tweaks than any kind of overhaul?
Yeah, I don't think you overhaul. I don't know. I think a lot's been made of that this offseason. I think any team that is not constantly moving forward to get better, and whether that word is evolve or whatever the word for that is, teams that just get stuck doing what they've done in the past, whether they've had success or not, are going to fall behind in this league. Teams have unlimited amount of time to work on what you do and to find what you do and find ways to exploit it. So if you're not constantly challenging yourself to get better and constantly challenging yourself as an individual, as an offense, to progress and do things differently and keep defenses off balance. The defenses in this league are too good. They'll tee off on you pretty fast. So you have to keep those guys on their heels, and I think that's just the natural evolution of offensive football in this league.
Greg, this summer after Christian was drafted, you said he didn't get too far ahead. You hadn't even seen him on the field yet, but now that you've seen him on the field, your first impressions are what?
Yeah, obviously he's a dynamic kid with the ball in his hand. I think we all kind of knew that, right? I think you don't get taken that high in the draft. We all saw him play at Stanford. I don't think any of us are surprised what he can do. I think, I think not surprised. He's a kid that can handle a lot. You've seen him. He can line up in a lot of different formations. He's not just going to stand next to Cam or stand behind Cam in the backfield. He can move around and do a lot of different things. Both as a running back and kind of a pseudo receiver type body. So. I don't think any of us are surprised. I think it's nice to see him get in here and do it at this level and do it this early. He has a special makeup to him. He has kind of just a special kind of composure that, nothing's too big. None of this is a surprise to him either. So he's got, again, this is going to be a constant process with him, but, he's as impressive as you could, I guess, be for a non-tackle practice type thing. I don't think there's anything more he could do, right? I think the next phase for him will be, I'd like to see guys try to tackle him for real, because the tag off, sometimes they don't even really tag him. I think it's going to be something to see now when this goes live. Some of those balls he has in the open field, I think I'm anxious to see him. The way he can move and cut and do things like that this early, and just the natural feel and instincts that he has are not overly common for rookies. I think he's special in that regard.
He seems like a yes sir, no sir kind of thing.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot. I kind of like it. He's just going to play, and I respect that. I think there's something to be said for just coming in, just play. What do you need me to do? What's the right way to do it? And go out there and be productive. Do what's asked of you, and just play. Don't be surprised when you have success. So I like that. I think it's a good attitude that he brings to the table. He's got a good look in his eye when he's in the huddle. None of this is too big for him. He belongs here. I don't think that should come as a shock to anybody.
What would you say to a linebacker or safety you got in one-on-one coverage?
What do I think about it?
What would you say to that guy having to face that?
I think that matchup is going to be interesting to see how teams play us. I don't know if the whole game you go and just say, hey, let's just let our linebackers match up against him out of the backfield. I think it's going to be interesting to see how defenses identify him, how defenses account for him in their pre-snap declaration or in their personnel matching. What do they account for him? What are they just going to treat him just as a typical running back? Are they going to give a little bit more of a wide receiver element to his play? So I think all that's yet to be seen. I think a lot of that will depend when we start game planning, we start getting into different matchup type things as the season progresses. I think you'll be able to see a lot of those things that he can do really well. Us hopefully take advantage of those things.
Greg, we got a glimpse out wide, you and him, tandem receivers out wide, and it looked like because the defense had to account specifically for him, you get open well by yourself anyway, but it helps you a little bit.
It helps. I've been the first one to say the more good guys out there running around, the better it is for everybody. There's no mistake. So you're right. I think some of that stuff, we did it today there in the red zone at the end with him to the same side, kind of doing a little option, and me being able to run kind of a deeper route and put some levels and put some stress on those levels on the defense. He's a guy that's going to attract attention, and you see sometimes guys, especially in the past and just throughout the league, if those running backs don't garner much attention, those second level linebackers and safeties, they tend to get deep, and it makes it hard for guys like me and Funch and Kelvin. The deeper those guys get, there's not a lot of space. We can't always throw the ball 100 yards. You got to find some levels back there, and he catches a few of those balls out of the backfield, and those guys have to come up and tackle him. Well, next time they're going to play a little closer. They're going to try to close some of that space in, and then it opens up things. So it all works. It all works in tandem, and that's why there's so much more to just playing than just handing them the ball, right? So I think a lot of that yet to come together, and it will. It's only been the first week, but as we get going, we'll see how much more and more, we can put into that.
We're going to come seeing Cam for years now. So Ron said today on the radio he's not 100% yet, but obviously he's made some good throws. So your assessment of him after a week?
Yeah, when we went up and worked out the week before camp up in Baltimore, I thought he looked good. I thought he looked good, the first 4 practices or whatever it was before he took the second half of the 5th one off or whatever it was. I thought he looked good. I don't think anything that's going on here, again, I'm not a doctor, I don't think anything that's going on with him getting some rest or him taking some throws off is alarming by any means. I think anybody coming off, especially a thrower, I imagine it'd be the same thing for the major league pitcher coming back. You don't just go out there and just go rag arm and just start throwing it all over the gym. There's a plan. These guys have thought this out, RV and Ron and those guys have been through this before, and there's a plan, and when it's time for him to throw, he'll throw, and when it's time for him not to throw, he'll not throw. And all things just getting him ready to be ready for the opener in San Francisco. That's what everything is about, not about how Cam throws today out here, but we're going to be able to put the process in to get him ready that he's throwing, and ready to roll when the season starts. That's what it's all about.
Craig, I realize Samuel hasn't been out here much, but do you notice more speed overall in offense?
I do. I think when you watch the tape, I think we got a lot of guys who really can run, both in the backfield, at wide receiver. I think we got some guys who can get down the field that are dynamic with the ball in their hands. Obviously Curtis hasn't done a lot, so it'd be nice to get him back out there hopefully soon. But the guys who have had their chances have done a nice job. Some of those young guys, you see today with Fred and Duke, and those young guys have gotten a chance, and they've showed that they can do some things for us too. A young guy like Bird, he's a guy that's always been right there on the cusp. But now all of a sudden Teddy's out of here, and those guys have moved on, and now maybe there's an opportunity for him. So. I think a lot of these young guys are seeing that there's a chance for them, and there's some opportunities to utilize their particular skill sets accordingly, and are trying to take advantage of it. So I think that room has done a nice job in that regard.
You were talking about the K-hat. Is that the standard now for you? I mean, is that what you kind of set the season hoping to get? Individually speaking, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, when we talked about it, this time last year, trying to be the first guy to get 3. I wasn't shy about it. It was something that I wanted to do. I was able to do it, and I'm going to try to do it again. Again, a lot goes into it. I just feel like it's the one individual statistic or whatever you want to call it that kind of sums up the way I've always tried to approach my career. Be productive, but be productive consistently, be durable, play every game. There's a lot that goes into that. There's a lot of guys that are productive for a 4 or 5 game stretch, then they have to sit a few out, come back, or guys have a great 1 year, fall off, and then everyone, can you have a bounce back? I don't ever want that to be me. That's something I've always prided myself on is, not only can you be highly productive, but can you be highly productive continuously? And I think that's kind of what that all simulates, and that's kind of what I've made my career on.